This is the country project presentation for Chad by Kyle Haynes and Ryan Sheets.
I want to provide some context around Chad's history that will help us understand the factors that create poverty in the country. After decolonization in 1960, Chad endured decades of civil war. And today, President Deby has enforced a relatively peaceful era, but at the cost of many civil and democratic liberties, with the threat of Boko Haram and many other terrorist organizations in the region still looming. We believe the greatest issue Chad faces is in poverty reduction. Currently, more than half of Chad's population lives in extreme poverty, with many malnourished and prone to illness or infection. Chad has one of the highest infant mortality rates in the region, with 70 deaths for every 1,000 live births. More than 20% of children in Chad die before the age of 5. Now, these economic indicators show just how drastic the poverty is in Chad. And while there is no easy solution, we're going to highlight investment in human capital as Chad's best chance at obtaining long-term economic growth to improve the standard of living. A child in Chad will only have about 5 years of schooling by the time they turn 18. This means that 98% of children in Chad cannot read by the age of 10. Chad's government spends only 2.2% of its GDP on education. This amounts to less spending than even nations with similar incomes. And as a result, according to the Human Capital Index, a young adult in Chad will only be about 30% as productive as a child with access to better education. Increased investment in education is a critical step towards creating a labor force with a higher literacy rate and the skills to be productive. Investments in human capital could have an effect throughout economic sectors. In Chad, oil accounts for 79% of exports, and agriculture makes up about 80% of all employment. On the graph to the right, we can see the world price of crude oil and how much this fluctuates over time. So when oil prices fall, Chad loses out on revenue and the economy suffers. Because so many people also rely on agriculture, droughts or climate damage have devastating effects on an already malnourished population. Currently, less than 2% of students receive training in STEM fields. Only with investment in human capital and STEM education can Chad begin to expand its economy into other sectors like alternative energy and move away from these unreliable natural resources.
We would now like to make an appeal to our African neighbors, Libya and Ghana specifically, for a trade agreement in which Chad would have access to a port either in the Mediterranean through Libya or in the Pacific through Ghana or Liberia, in exchange for oil and agricultural products which are unavailable currently to both Libya and Ghana. What this would do would allow for economic regional development, but even more, as you can see by this graph, in 2015, Libya was the target of the 4th most frequent terrorist attacks in all of Africa. We want to create regional development economically and political stability where these kinds of terror attacks do not happen in the region. Finally, we are looking to the developed world for investment in human capital in Chad, which will ultimately allow for poverty reduction. Specifically, we are asking Germany for this investment. As we know, Germany is the flagship country in Europe combating the refugee crisis. Chad currently harbors 450,000 refugees and is looking to help shoulder this refugee burden with Germany. However, we cannot adequately do so without investment in human capital and economic development. Similarly, investment from Germany will help them fight the war on terror in Chad by creating regional stability, regional development, which can ultimately move away from commodities like oil and agriculture and lead to long-term sustainable development, which will create a safer hemisphere. Finally, Chad is known for its support of Germany in international organizations like the United Nations, and we will continue the support so long as there is continued investment in the poverty reduction of Chad.